I want to start today's episode with a pop quiz for our listeners. I know that you weren't expecting that, but that's what puts the pop in pop quiz. Question 1. What is the median age of an American? If you said 38, you'd be right. If you lined up every single American in order by age, the person right in the middle is solidly a millennial and just a few months away from their 39th birthday. But you wouldn't know that looking at our nation's leadership, which brings me to our next question. How many US senators are under the age of 40? If you guessed 2, you just got 100% on our pop quiz. Congratulations, dear listener, you have officially earned a participation trophy. I suppose it's fair that the average age of a US senator skews older, especially since the minimum age requirement to be a senator is 30. But is that good for our nation, that the average age of a senator is nearly 70 years old? What does it mean for Democrats who claim to be the party of young people, but who have more members over 70 than Republicans? Well, our guest today is here to talk about this very issue and tell you what you can do about it. Welcome back to Participation Trophy, the do-gooder's guide to changing the world, an unscientific podcast where we set out to discover if participation trophies actually drove a generation of greats. I'm your host, Topher Williams. I am so excited to be joined today on the podcast by someone who's making waves amongst our oldest elected leaders. Her long list of accolades includes being named by Time magazine to the list of 100 rising stars from around the world in 2022, as well as one of Fortune's 40 Under 40 in 2020. She's the co-founder of Run for Something, an organization helping young people run for office, a 2-time author whose latest book, When We're in Charge, The Next Generation's Guide to Leadership, came out in May of this year. Please welcome the amazing Amanda Litman. Hey, Amanda, thanks for joining today.
Thanks for having me, Topher. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be a lot of fun. So here's the deal. I don't want to get 1 second older before we jump in, so I'd love for us to get into it. How are you changing the world?
So I Run for Something, and we help young people run for state and local office all across the country. In the last 8 years, we've built a pipeline of more than 210,000 young people all across the country who've said they want to run. We've endorsed more than 3,000, helped elect more than 1,500 millennials and Gen Z to state and local office in 49 states. These leaders are moving the needle on housing, on abortion access, on climate issues, on reproductive health care, on gender equity. They are actively making life better for people every day. Some of them are already in Congress. And I think as a whole, they are redefining what it means to be a leader right now in a way that is, I think, transformative, both for politics, but also for places far outside it.
That's amazing. And some pretty big numbers. I mean, getting that many young people to run for office and get elected to office is no small feat. And, you know, Amanda, you've worked for some iconic leaders like Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. And I'm curious, what made you want to get involved in campaigns and politics in general?
I don't have like a sob story or anything, which sometimes makes me feel kind of out of place in some progressive political spaces. I just always thought politics was interesting in a way to make the world a better place. I thought campaigns were a really compelling combo of art and science. There's a little bit of human psychology, a lot of theater, and certainly some data-driven decision-making, although arguably sometimes too much data-driven decision-making these days. I skipped a day of school when I was in high school to go see Barack Obama speak before he announced his campaign for president. He was doing like a Students for Obama tour, and he was doing so at the university across the street from my high school. And when I went, I was hooked. I knew I wanted to work for him one day. I made my college decision based on being able to eventually go work for his campaign. I went to Northwestern so I could be in Chicago. I wrote my thesis in college on women running for office against other women and how that changed gender performance in TV ads. This is the only thing I've ever known I wanted to do. I wasn't always sure what part of politics and campaigns I wanted for a while. I thought maybe political journalism. I thought maybe, speech writing at one point, but ultimately landed on digital strategy when I was placed as an intern on the email team in 2012. And it has been off to the races ever since.
That's awesome. Honestly, we might be the same person because I too skipped school once to watch a Barack Obama speech in high school. I was going to get an unexcused absence, but everyone in the entire school skipped. And so they didn't give anyone an unexcused absence. And then, I too got really fired up about it and went and became a digital strategist in campaigns. So kind of interesting to see sort of the Barack Obama advocacy boom that happened is pretty cool. Mm-hmm. You recently wrote a book, which is your second book, and it's called When We're in Charge. And in it, you say, everything would be better if we blew up the model of what good leadership looks like. And while I love the sentiment, I'm wondering if you can tell us what good leadership actually looks like to you.
Yeah, I think especially in this moment in time, in this environment, good leadership is responsibly authentic. It is boundaried. It is transparent to a point. It is clearly defining what success and failure looks like. It is very on the level about what a workplace can and can't provide, or what a community space can and can't provide. It is honest with the people who are joining. It is fun. I think it should be fun. Or at the very least, it shouldn't be miserable. Like, I think about this a lot. Work is work. However, it shouldn't make you want to crush your soul at the end of the day, because that doesn't leave space for anything else. I think about, especially in the political environment, good leadership knows who they are and what they believe. There might be debates about how to communicate what they believe, but there's no question about what those core values are. I think that authenticity with boundaries is what helps people build trust with their leaders. And I think we have seen over the last 15, 20 years, a bunch of different models of how one could show up, from, Trump's racist, bigoted bullshit to, the sort of more stoic, boomer-esque robot, to the opposite end of boomer vibes, which is oversharing everything on Facebook and not understanding that not everyone needs to be all up in your business. And what good leadership looks like now is so much bigger than that. The other thing I come back to quite a bit with what good leadership looks like and why it matters to blow up the model is because millennials are a more diverse generation than Gen X. Gen Z is even more diverse than millennials. By definition, not to be demographics are destiny, but by definition, there are going to be more women, people of color, LGBTQIA folks in positions of power over the next 15 years as boomers hit their retirement age in the next 5. That's going to mean that what it looked like to be a boss 10 years ago is not going to be what our bosses look like 5 years from now.
That's such a good point. I appreciate you sharing that because, we see so many older folks in political office and leading companies and leading organizations. And there's sort of been this grandiose critique online that millennials and Gen Z folks just aren't up to snuff to be leaders, right? That that's the whole point of this podcast, right? That we receive participation trophies, that we spend our money on avocado toast instead of on buying a house. And there's sort of this attitude that we aren't capable of being great leaders. And I think that doesn't necessarily square with folks like you and the folks with Run for Something who are running for office. I also know, though, that our generation and other Gen Z folks, they need to feel inspired by their leaders. And I'm curious, Amanda, if there's a moment that stands out to you as the moment that really pushed you off of the sidelines and into the work of movement building.
So Run for Something's founding story is, I often joke, born of the ashes of the 2016 election. So you mentioned I worked for Hillary for 2 years. I was her email director running online fundraising. And about a week after Election Day, I started hearing from people I'd gone to high school and college with. Hey, Amanda, I'm a public school teacher in Chicago. I'm thinking about running for office. If you're the only person I know that works in politics, what do I do? Where do I go? Who do I call? And at the time, if you were young and newly excited about politics and wanted to do more than vote and more than volunteer, there was nowhere you could go that would take your call. That to me felt like a symptom of really big problems in our democracy and in the Democratic Party. So I reached out to a whole bunch of people, one of whom became my co-founder, Ross Morales-Ricchetto. And Ross and I wrote a plan, we built a website, and we launched Run for Something on Trump's inauguration day. And we really thought it would be small. We thought we'd get 100 people in the first year. We got 1,000 people in the first week. As I said earlier, we're up to 210,000 people. It is, as far as we know, the biggest candidate pipeline anywhere. it is that moment of loss that I think really fueled me to say, there are no grown-ups in the room anymore. I can't wait for someone to do this thing that I think needs to be solved. If I want this problem solved, I need to do it myself.
That's such a good point. And honestly, something many other people have said on this podcast, right, is that like, if it's not me, then who? And if it's not now, when, right? That has actually been a really consistent thing we've been hearing from people that we've talked to. And I'm curious though, we have a lot of elected officials and leaders who've been in office for a really long time, who are a lot older. And I'm curious, how has your call for younger leadership been received by our current elected officials?
It's an interesting question. By our current elected officials, sometimes they get a little persnickety because they assume I mean them, which I do sometimes. Especially at this point, I think every older leader needs to be able to make a proactive case about why they are the best and only person to carry us forward in this crisis. I think few of them could make that case compellingly, especially after we have built such a strong, diverse bench of talent at the state and local level. Maybe a decade ago, you could have argued, well, there's not that many great local leaders. Everyone at every level is old. And maybe that was true then. That's not true anymore. There are amazing millennials and Gen Z elected to state and local office who are ready to rise. We've got to create the space for them. I've been really pleasantly surprised, though, that outside of the elected official space, donors, supporters, party actors, and others are like, thank God you're saying the thing. Because this is a hard conversation to have in public. It can often feel ageist or personal, which maybe it is on both fronts. It can often bring up feelings about like our looming mortality and the way in which biology comes for us all. But I think it's an important one to have anyway, because as we've learned over the last couple months, there's just no guarantee it's happening in private.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. And having myself been on campaigns and Senate campaigns and sort of seen how that process works, it's definitely not something that's happening in private or with staff, right? I mean, I was staff for Senator John Hickenlooper, who is an incredible person and a great senator. And, I love him a lot, right? And he's, a little older and a good guy. But I think you raise a good point of like, okay, well, if we continue to have folks over 70 years old running for office, what does that mean for next generation leadership? And those terms are long. There's 6 years. So, at what point is it time for younger people to actually step up and be running for these positions?
Well, it's like nobody on the inside is incentivized to say, sir or ma'am, maybe it's time you step aside. No one on staff, the candidate themselves, their family. It's like, it is completely understandable why they shy away from these conversations. But it is so important to put your moment in history and the role that you play in the broader system above your ego. And I think that we have to be constantly reminding older leaders and leaders of all ages that part of leadership is mentoring others, is bringing up other folks behind you, is ensuring that there is a succession plan in place. That is as important as what you do in office is how you prepare for the next person to hold it too.
Well, it reminds me of Senator Feinstein, who, of course, passed away in her Senate seat. And honestly, it's really a bummer, I think, for her legacy because she was such an icon earlier in her career. I mean, she was a trailblazer as a woman. She was one of the most public, early supporters of the LGBTQ community during the gay rights movement. I mean, she really was a pioneer in so many ways. And it seems like her legacy is almost tarnished because she continued to hold on to that Senate seat. And the staff around her was not incentivized to do anything about it either because they benefited from her continuing to be in the Senate seat.
Exactly. And I think that is one of the things I want to keep reminding older leaders. When I've been writing op-eds, I've been posting about this and like pushing it even in private conversations is if you leave out the front door, if you retire, if you step aside, if you make this your last term, your legacy is celebrated and lifted up. If you wait around. If you, God forbid, pass away in office, or if you endure a primary where people make your age and your inability to tackle this moment part of the campaign, like you're going out the back door, and it's not going to be fun. Like, it's not going to feel good. It's not how you want your legacy to be defined. I think that's one of the saddest things about Senator Feinstein is instead of the amazing work she did for the first 50 years of her career, it's defined by the final 2 or 6 months.
So the organization you founded, Run for Something, was started to help young people run for office, which is kind of what we've been talking about this whole conversation. Mm-hmm. But somebody who's listening might think that when we're sitting here calling on millennials and Gen Z people to get involved and run for office, we're not actually talking about them specifically. What is your pitch to somebody listening today on why they should run for office, and what is the first step?
You should run for office because if you don't, someone worse than you will. Someone who doesn't care about solving problems, someone who isn't thoughtful about how to use power responsibly, someone who isn't good on the internet. If you don't do this, someone much shittier than you is going to, and you're going to be mad when you see them do it. If you are even remotely thinking about running for office, Run for Something would love to help you. We have a whole program set up for you. You don't need to know what office you want to run for, when you want to run. You don't need to know anything beyond you're interested in maybe. You sign up at runforwhat.net. We will help you figure out every other part of the process. It is all we do, and we love to do it.
So runforwhat.net is where anyone listening can go to sign up and actually start on the journey of running for office, even if they don't know what they want to run for. And it doesn't matter where they live, right? Anyone in any state, anywhere in the United States can do this.
That's right. Anyone, anywhere.
Amazing. Okay, so if you haven't been having fun before this, Amanda, hopefully we will have some fun in this next segment. I'm going to ask you some rapid-fire millennial nostalgia questions, and I need to know if you are ready.
Hit me. Let's go.
All right.
Back to the 90s.
Let's go. NSYNC or Backstreet Boys?
Neither. I was a 98 Degrees girl.
Oh, okay. Good to know. Mean Girls or Clueless?
Oh, I'm not picking between those two. Those are my foundational texts. Those are my Bibles. Those are canon.
Gosh. That's true. That's fair. I might just have to say Mean Girls only because Lindsay Lohan is such an icon, but I really feel you. The fashion in Clueless might be better. It's hard to say.
I mean, how often do you ever quote, I know you can be overwhelmed and I know you can be underwhelmed, but can you ever just be whelmed? It's like such a perfect joke. It's like, I think about it all the time from Clueless. Ugh, I love that movie. I'm going to pick Clueless, but know that Mean Girls is equally as important to my sense of self.
Lindsay Lohan, if you're listening, Amanda still loves you. Don't get it wrong. Okay, next one. Yeah. Lunchables or pizza rolls?
Lunchables. It's the original girl dinner.
Yeah, I mean, the original girl dinner, the original charcuterie board, right? I mean, I'm with you. My husband still eats Lunchables to this day, so we're still doing it in my household. Okay, early MySpace or early Facebook?
Early MySpace, when you could really like personalize the page and like set up your background and play music and then curate your top 8.
Yes.
I liked early MySpace.
It was how we all learned how to code originally. I mean, that's awesome.
That's right.
Okay, renting a movie from Blockbuster or Netflix?
Renting a movie from Blockbuster. That like the parameters of choice made it feel very contained in a way that scrolling endlessly on Netflix really stresses me out.
Yeah, well, and there was nothing quite like on a Friday night going with your mom to go to Blockbuster and pick out, a movie, and you'd pick out your candy and you'd wander from aisle to aisle. I feel like I can still smell my neighborhood Blockbuster, even after all these years.
I can see it in my mind's eye so perfectly.
Okay, next, this or that, Amanda. Skinny jeans or low-rise jeans?
Skinny jeans. Low-rise jeans can be banished to the depths of hell.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I still have a couple pairs of skinny jeans. I'm not going to lie. I don't know if I'll ever be able to let go of them. Okay. Finally, we've arrived at the most important question of this podcast, Amanda. Did you receive a participation trophy, and what was it for?
I almost certainly got participation trophies. I was a joiner, so I would do all kinds of like group sports. I probably got one for soccer. I was not good at soccer. I probably got one for swimming. I was not good at swimming. I was good at gymnastics. So those were like real trophies. I earned those ones, but the other sports I was not good at. So soccer and swimming for sure.
Cool. All right, Amanda. Well, where can folks find you online to follow and connect and keep this conversation going?
I'm on all the different social media platforms at either Amanda Litman or Amanda Litm, and you can subscribe to my Substack at just amandalitman.substack.com.
Amazing. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for joining our podcast today. It's been such a pleasure and a treat to have you on Participation Trophy. I appreciate all the work that you're doing to help young people run for office. And if you are even thinking about it out there, make sure you go to runforwhat.net so that you can get started. Thanks, Amanda.
Thanks, Topher. This was fun.
Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Participation Trophy. I'm your host, Topher Williams. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Participation Trophy Podcast, and follow me on Instagram at @TophMcGof so you don't miss one single thing. Until next time, remember, it's up to us to make the world that we want to see. Bye.